Hi, Armoured Pants here, and I have another video for you continuing the German line, and this time we're looking at the Tier VIII heavy tank, the VK100-01P, and we have a complete guide for you, starting as always with a full tech spec, and we're going to use blitzhanger.com. Now, before we go into the details of this tank, let me say that this tank is very much a Marmite tank. If you don't know what Marmite is, it's a spread made in the UK, made from vegetable and yeast extracts. People put it on toast and things like that, and people either love it or hate it, and that's very much like this tank. People either love it or hate it. There are very few people who actually have a sort of middle of the road, no real opinion on this tank, because the tank is quite binary. It's very slow moving, with a massive gun, massive armour, therefore you can either have a very good game in it, or it really suits your game style, or it doesn't. Now personally, I like this tank. I love this tank a lot. I've had some great games in it. I think it's great fun. I love the fact that you're able to bounce shots in it. I love the fact that it has a big gun that does lots of damage, and that its armour is pretty troll. And I think that you can play it to negate the fact that it has a terrible lack of mobility. It has a great gun, does lots of damage, 128mm, but it has a very slow reload. Even with gun rammer, it's 14.5 seconds. So you really need to be aware of that and make your shots count, because if you miss, it's a very long time until there's a new round ready to fire. Its DPM is pretty good, and you can see it has 65mm of pen and HE, so bear that in mind and load up HE, because it will go through most mediums and all light tanks, especially on the side and back. And your AP round is a monster round itself. It's going to do anything from 400 to 500 damage for you. Has monster penetration, as you can see, and the gun handling is really good. And the thing about this tank is, right, and let's talk a little bit about relative versus actual damage per minute. In theory, this tank has low damage per minute because it has such a long reload, but damage per minute is based upon the average damage per shell multiplied by the rounds fired. So it assumes that all rounds go through, and that's not always the case. But with this gun, you can be sure, if you aim properly, that all the rounds will go through. So its actual damage per minute versus theoretical is very good. Now, whoa, armor alert, look at this. This is really what's great about this tank. Its armor is troll, even for Tier VIII. I mean, this thing will just bounce shots until the cows come home. It is phenomenal. It has spaced armor around the sides too, so if you've been up against it and you've fired into it, especially if you've fired a heat round, you've probably seen nothing happen, and that's why, because it's spaced armor. And even AP rounds sometimes bounce off the side. Look at this. It is a front-on monster if you're a top tier, even if you're against your compatriot in Tier VIII, and even against Tier IX. Still on front monster. The only thing that's really vulnerable is that small lower plate, but even when up tiered, it is really difficult to pen, and you have to aim at that lower plate, or else you will bounce and not pen. And of course, the longer you spend on target, the more likely you are to be hit either by this tank or by one of its allies. So it is a very tough customer, a very tough cookie. Historically, this tank was only on blueprints, and it was a tank on the road to the development of the mouse, but it actually never saw the light of day. We never got further than the blueprints, but it's alive and kicking in Blitz, which is one of the great things about Blitz, isn't it? We get to play tanks that didn't exist historically, or were very rare, or that we can't see very often today, even in tank museums. Now look at its speed. It's slow, right? 20 kilometers an hour. It is going to take you forever to get places, and therefore its ability to influence a game is somewhat limited. You are going to find yourself playing in only one part of the map. You are not going to be able to get around the map and influence the game in different parts of the map. You're going to find yourself playing really just in one area or one side of the map. And while we're waiting for the game to upload here, I guess that limitation is one of the reasons that a lot of people don't really like it. But of course, if you're aware of this beforehand and you know the tank's limitations, then you can adapt your gameplay to suit it. So on this map here, I'm up tiered, but I know that my armor is pretty good, especially front on. So I know that I don't have the speed really to go into the city or to go right. So I just decide to use my armour, which is one of my major benefits and advantages of my tank, and go to A, support my team. If you remember or have looked at the guide to heavy tanks, which I've done, beginner's guide to heavy tanks, you'll see that securing vital and strategic points in the map is a key role of a heavy tank. In many ways, this tank is a quintessential heavy tank in that it has great armour but is very slow. So I decided to play for my team to move forward and help support capture A. And I know that my armour will allow me to do this safe in the knowledge that I can bounce some shots and that I can support my team. So I'm moving up here to support the IS because I want to reduce the base capture time and reduce his exposure to enemy fire. So I come alongside him and I'm using my armour to capture the base, which is, as I said, one of my main assets. There's a T-32 here that we're spotting up. He's trying to put rounds in, but he takes a lot of damage for his trouble. I fluffed the first couple of shots here because I was kind of firing a bit blind. I'm trying to just gauge where his weak points are in the armour, but I can't really see. And I take one in the fuel tank for my troubles. But we've captured A, and again I fluff a shot here, so you can see that I'm not really obeying my own golden rule of making the rounds count in this. But after a poor start to this game, I actually get a bit better. So what I decide to do here is, I can't really do anything here. I don't have the gun depression to do anything with these guys, and if I try to pop over, I'm going to get smashed because I'm going to reveal the underbelly of the tank. So what I decide to do is I'm going to support my team by pushing around and try to flank, albeit very slowly, these three heavy red tanks. Now I'm quite confident that with my armour etc. I've reloaded so I can clear that T-32 at last. Now there's the armour in practice, a nice bounce there from the IS-8. He's trying to wiggle here, he's doing the right thing, trying to create some angles, but my gun is really good. And now a brawl is coming up, and you will see that this tank is very, very good in a brawl if you play to its strengths. So what am I doing? I'm moving backwards and forwards. Now I'm creating an angle. There's no shot for him there. If he fires onto me, it's going to bounce. So now he's trying to get onto the front of me. Again, I angle up, bounce, I pull back. I know he's reloading, so it's safe. I put one right into his drive wheel, track him, push onto him again, do a bit of damage on the ram. And now I'm angling again, just giving them just nothing to fire at, and again a bounce. Now he's on a reload, I pull back, make sure, and bam, kill. So even though this tank is slow and cumbersome, you can brawl very well in it if you play to its strengths. Now why am I pushing on here? Because if I go back to A to take on the two tanks pushing onto my ally here, this Centurion is going to come behind us and he's going to do all sorts of damage to us. So even though I don't want to, I have to take him on, and another brawl is coming up here. And this is a brawl again against a much faster tank with better DPM and better agility. But again, I play to the tank's strengths. I'm moving my tracks and a turret at the same time. I bounce a shot. I'm giving him no easy shots. And then I put another round into him and I get the kill again. So two brawls there against tier 9s, more agile, better DPM tanks. And let's just look at this in slow motion. I want to slow it down because if you get caught out in the open in this tank, it is a bad situation. But if you play to the tank's strengths, you can actually come out of it quite successfully, as I did on both these occasions. Here's a lesson for new players to the game. When in a brawl like this in a heavy tank, don't just turn the turret. You have to turn the tracks as well, as you saw me doing there. This halves your time on target. Plus, you're also creating angles with the hull of your tank, which bounce shots, as I did with the Cent there. The Centurion, by the way, has a great gun with great pen. But by creating the angles, moving my hull around, I gave him nothing to shoot at. And even though he's a far more agile tank, I was able to win that brawl. Now I'm trying to draw out the reds. I'm slow. I want to get to help my teammate here, but I'm really slow. So I'm asking him if he can back up to bring those reds onto my gun. but I guess he's really preoccupied in a 2v1 brawl. So, and he does very well, I have to say. He's cleared one of the tanks. He also puts another round into the T44 here before the T44 gets him. He really kind of won that brawl for us, because now he leaves my job very easy. It's just a simple mop up. So thank you very much to him. He did a really, really good job. So hats off to him. So there we go. Mastery badge in this tank. Almost 3.4k damage. You know, I think myself and the IS did a very good job in that game. You can see there the IS-8 I took out in the brawl, the Centurion in the brawl, and then the other two tanks were really just mopping up exercises for me. But I think what's really remarkable about this game is that it shows the brawling skills of this tank if played correctly, and that's something that you probably have not associated with this tank. Probably if you're one of the people who hates it, you've been playing it, got caught in the open by something fast moving like the Centurion or that, and just got smashed. But if you play to the tank's strengths and use that armour, you can actually do pretty well, as you saw there. Tanks are also afraid to get really close to you in this, because they will also bounce shots, which is why the Cent was staying away from me, and I also don't want you to ram them. Now this is an atypical German heavy. Why? Because it has more armour and less speed than, let's say, the Tiger II and the other German heavies. It has a great gun which is very accurate, but of course it does have a slow reload, but you get nice big alpha rolls from it, as you saw. And it will pen, and it is reliable, and if you use supercharge, you will have really good muzzle velocity. The reload rate is 14.5 seconds, and that's with the gun rammer, so make sure you use the gun rammer. Use supercharge, as I mentioned, because you want to maximize the muzzle velocity, especially if you're firing over distance. And you need to make your shots count, because the long reload is unforgiving. If I had missed shots in those brawls, I would have been in real trouble, right? It is a side-scraping monster, as you saw in the brawls. That was kind of mobile side-scraping, angling, got lots of bounces. And its real versus theoretical DPM is actually quite good, so keep this in mind. And this is something you need to keep in mind for all tanks, especially when comparing Russian to German tanks, because Russian tanks may, in theory, have higher DPM, but practically, because some of the shots miss and bounce, they don't. Thanks for watching. Cheers, Mush. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you found it useful. And like Marmite, I either like it or hate it. Okay, take care. See you guys. Take care. Cheers. Bye.